Hey guys, we're hanging out at the beautiful Fraser River near Vancouver, Canada, and we're checking out the Cube. This is a full suspension, all mountain type of bike, stereo race.
Correct.
160,
yes.
500, 27.5.
You got it. Those
Something
are the
like
numbers.
That.
Those are the numbers.
It's an incredible name for a pretty incredible bike here. And I just want to run through this fairly quickly. It's sprinkling a little bit, and I want to get Jason's feedback. He works at an e-bike shop here. It's really nearby, right?
It is, yeah. Just stone's throw from here. It's City Cycles Langley.
That's right.
So one of the newest locations for City Cycles.
And you carry a Cube and a whole bunch of great bikes, but this is one of the more premium. It's a more expensive bike, $59.99.
That's right. That's Canadian dollars.
Canadian dollars. Okay. Wow. Well, you know, you're paying a lot, but you're getting top of the line stuff. So we've got Bosch Performance Line CX. This is the 75 Newton meter eMTB specific motor. Fully enclosed in like plastic here. I'm not used to seeing that. And there's this nice kind of a scuff guard along the bottom. It's a little bit thicker. Miranda alloy chainring, kind of a guard that also doubles as a guide so the chain's not going to bounce off track. I noticed that they even have this little chunk of plastic here, and that's probably to prevent chain suck, because sometimes that can happen if you're in really thick mud. What we've got here is a 2.5 revolution per single crank revolution. It's a reduction gear system from Bosch. 15-tooth chainring, so it's one of the smaller ones. Gives you a great mechanical advantage. 11 to 46 tooth in the rear. Plenty of range for climbing. This is 11 sprockets. Shimano Deore XT with the one-way clutch, so you can lock it in the up position to tighten the spring a little bit and reduce some of the chain bounce and maybe even contact here. And you'll see they've got this really great long, extra long slap guard top and bottom, so they're really trying to protect the frame. This is a 4-bar, sort of a modified Horst Link suspension in the rear, and we got the Fox DPS dual piston setup, EVO extra volume, 3 positions for compression, near lockout, and then rebound adjust. Up here, compression, lockout. The rain is a-coming, so I'm gonna keep going. We got the rapid recovery rebound up front. It's an air fork, 34 millimeter stanchions, black, anodized. I think you guys added that,
Yes, that's mine. I added that.
I really like that, you know, especially because it does get a little bit muddy around here. We've got the Bosch Performance on display, a little bit more compact, easy to reach, but it's not removable. It's also not going to get banged up as much if you crash on this bike. So that's a lot of the eMTB bikes with Bosch are going with that display. So I appreciate that. We got the seat post dropper, 150 millimeters of range here, and it's not like set positions. You can just dial it in for whatever fits perfectly for you. One other thing about Cube bikes, I noticed they don't come with pedals. So you've actually got a high bike pedal on here, really big and extra grippy. You've got those fixed pins. They look nice. They've taken a little bit of pedal strike. You can see some scratches here despite having shorter 165 millimeter crank arms. We were talking about that earlier, and it's with the longer travel and everything, it's, I guess, potential for contact.
Absolutely. You're going to have a lot of bottom bracket drop, so particularly pedaling through corners with your suspension compressed, you're going to tag a pedal. It's just going to happen.
It can happen, right? And that's back to like the motor casing and having that plastic. Another thing that struck me, yes, we have boost here, 110 millimeter through axle, 15 millimeters up front, and then in the back 148. So that's going to give you a stronger bracing angle. These are nice rims, and they've got the reinforcement eyelets. They're a little bit wider, and they support the 27.5 by 2.6 inch tires. So this is kind of the 650B standard.
Yep.
That's giving you a little bit more float, but not too much. This isn't 2.8 or 3.0.
That's right.
2.6, so it's light, it's nimble. The bike itself weighs about 53.2 pounds or something like that. It comes in 4 different sizes, and we're looking at the medium 18-inch. Only one color scheme, but it looks really nice. Sloped top tube, maybe give you a little bit of a lower, seat post position there and standover height, but they needed to have room for the rear suspension there. Also, anodized black. Really just awesome stuff here, and I wanted to get your feedback about suspension, okay? Because we were talking about this earlier.
Yes.
And, I learned a lot from you. We were saying this is 160 millimeter travel, so kind of that all mountain.
Pretty much that's the do anything you want range of travel, 160 millimeters. You've got lots to soak up the big hits, and it's still not so long that you can't enjoy a nice cross-country ride on this.
Okay, yeah, especially if you dial in the compression a little bit.
That's right, and that's a great thing with this. The fork has the compression adjustment, so you can virtually lock it out. It has a multiple indents, so you can, it's a very positive engagement, so you know where you're at. And your rear shock is very simple, 3-position. You've got open, you've got trail ride, and then you've got virtually locked out.
Okay. The other thing is you could put tokens in that front.
That's right, yes. So the RochShox Yari fork, the air spring has the ability to install what they call their air tokens. So they're basically little plastic majigs that go inside of the air spring, and it effectively reduces your air volume.
Yeah.
So you can have a more supple fork at the shorter end or at the top end of the travel, but when you really push through it, you get a very progressive spring rate, and it makes it bottomless, basically.
Huh. Yeah, and that's, I don't weigh a whole lot myself, so I like when you can adjust the air pressure, so it's a little bit softer for lighter weight. And then with the compression, you're basically, there's like oil in there, and you're controlling how quickly or easily the oil can move in one direction.
Exactly.
That's when it's being compressed.
Yes.
And then rebound, it's the other direction. So
That's
it's how
right.
quickly is it responding and kind of stretching back out.
That's right, that's right.
You've got kind of everything.
It's really important, particularly from a higher end mountain bike standpoint, to have the ability to control what that suspension is doing. Because you don't want to be riding a glorified pogo stick.
No, that's true. And the anodized stanchions, that's another way to just protect the aluminum alloy.
Exactly.
And make it a little bit harder. And then the 34mm stanchions up front, it's a little bit thicker, so it's going to be stiffer.
Yes, incredibly stiff. Along with that boost spacing, that wider spacing, you get a very, very rigid front end. The steering is incredibly precise. It's
fantastic. And I appreciate just a little bit of a deeper look at some of this stuff. Internally routed cables for the seat post dropper, you know, and the brakes too are a big upgrade. So these are Magura. We've got an MT lever and an MT5 on this side, and then I believe these are, you know, this is the quad piston caliper up front with 203mm rotor. So it's a really big rotor, and that's going to give you a better mechanical advantage and heat dissipation. And then with those dual piston setup in the rear, maybe you don't have quite as much surface area for braking, but you've got a smaller 180mm rotor. A lot of your braking power, it happens at the front of the bike when momentum shifts as you're actually stopping. But look from this side. So they've got that same sort of down tube cup design going on here around the battery. They don't have any plastic covers or anything, but they do have like a cutout here on the frame, probably to reduce weight a little bit. And then these crank arms, again, being race face, they're actually sort of hollowed out on the backside, which is really nice. Up here, we've got race face as well. And this is a 35mm versus 31.8 is kind of the standard, so it's a little bit thicker and maybe stiffer.
Certainly stiffer. The difference between the 35mm and 31.8 is noticeable even for a novice rider. You just don't get that handlebar flexing, and it just goes along with the 34mm stanchions, the boost spacing on the hub, and it keeps everything going where you point it.
It's fantastic. And it's shorter, I noticed as well, so it kind of moves you back. I've heard there's like the kind of a North American geometry that a lot of these bikes are going for. Is that because you're descending and you don't want to be too far forward?
Certainly don't want to be cantilevered over that front axle. You know, you want to have your weight behind the front axle so you don't go over in a steep descent.
That makes sense. That's, yeah, it's a great setup, and you notice it's a different feel when you get on a bike like this. And then the tires. So up front, we've got the Schwalbe Magic Mary. These things, they're set up. They're nicer tires. So Evolution, we've got Super Gravity and Snakeskin. You could set these up to be tubeless. I think the rims are sort of tubeless ready. Addicts, that's the softer rubber. And then the big knobs to give you control and just grip as you're steering. Versus in the rear, we've got Schwalbe Nobby Nics, and these ones have a slightly different tread pattern and a different PSI rating. So up front, it's like 17 to 34 or something, and then the rear, it's a little bit higher. And so a lot of your weight seems to be towards the rear on e-bikes in particular. I'm looking at a variety of e-bikes like mountain versus city commuter cruiser, but still having higher pressure in the rear to support some of that weight. What do you have to say about that?
I think that what Cube's done here is really, really smart. They've taken from the non-electric mountain bike design standpoint, having a wider tire up front makes a far more predictive steering. It floats over stuff. You don't need as wide in the rear. It's going to follow you no matter what. So you can go a little narrower, a little less aggressive knob, and that's going to create a much more efficient platform to pedal on.
And okay, so on that note, I think these are both 2.6 width, But if
that's
that's
a much
a
higher
lower
volume.
it's a higher volume and maybe a lower pressure also
Yes.
spreads it out a little bit more.
Exactly.
Okay, this is awesome. I'm learning so much today, and it's just you had like a year-long full-time bicycle school.
I did. Yes, it was a full year long, 5 days a week.
Was that here? And
It was in New Westminster.
Westminster.
Many years ago.
thank you. It's a real pleasure, and it's neat to get to come into a shop like yours. I think this is one of the demo bikes.
Yes, this is actually my personal demo.
Well, hey, that's
So
how you know
I'll
with
be
the pedal
the one
strikes.
responsible for the pedal strike.
Fantastic. And I want to call out, the rain is come and going, but it's kind of a rain visor on that Avis helmet. Is this the one with the light? Yeah.
is, yes.
So safety. A bike like this, we don't have fender bosses. We don't have integrated lights. There's even no bottle cage bosses. However, you come back to like wearing a Camelback or something.
Which is precisely what I do.
Is that what you do?
I do, yeah.
And I noticed you're wearing pants here, and so this is sort of my commentary on that chainring guard and trying to help your pants sort of slough out of the way. I'm wearing the pedal pushers, so I don't have that problem. You have any other feedback about e-bikes with mid-motors and pants or accessories for Canada?
I would certainly say looking for some at least partial coverage of that ring is really, really important.
Yeah.
I've been riding the Bosch CX motor for quite some time, and I've not had my pants get caught in it yet.
But hey, especially when it's so tight right here.
It's a very small ring. There's not a lot of room for your pants to get caught in there.
And so back to the ring size and what this really means if you're not familiar with Bosch. This is like their high performance motor. It supports up to 120 RPM pedal cadence, and that's nice because if you're descending and then you're coming up to a hill, I'm a regular mountain biker too, okay? And you usually are like downshift so you can keep your cadence and climb. Well, with a 50 plus pound bike, it's kind of you're relying on the motor, but it's still nice to be able to spin and help effectively. And if you can't pedal at that high RPM and you're up in these like higher gears, well then you and the motor are both struggling. This is a mid-drive. It's leveraging that rear cassette, right? And to effectively do that, it needs to have a higher RPM support. So they do. Bosch does. And it's got a rear wheel sensor here. So for speed, it's got a pedal speed and sort of a torque sensor in there. It's measuring all three of those signals 1,000 plus times per second. It's phenomenal. And it's also measuring kind of the waves of pedal pressure and then comparing that to shifting pressure, and it tries to do shift detection and ease off. So the motor is trying to back off just as you would naturally when you're pedaling, and it's so responsive and quick that it's going to reduce drivetrain wear. And that's kind of important when you've got these lighter weight, higher end components, but you're putting up to 75 Newton meters of torque through them. This is their high performance motor. So again, I think it does a good job, but they've got this smaller chain ring here, which is, it's going through like a reduction gearing. So every single crank revolution you put through is transferred into 2.5 revolutions on that chain ring. It makes a little bit more noise. It does create a little bit of mechanical friction in there. You've got leverage over it, but it's something that is a bit of a con compared to a traditional size chainring. I still think this is a fantastic motor. It's reliable, it's proven, it's one of the leaders in the space. But do you have anything to say about that, Jason?
I think based on what's available, at least in my market, this is probably some of the best value that you can get for a performance full suspension e-bike.
Huh.
It hits the nail on the head right across the board.
So is this the kind of bike where, like we drove here actually, but we could have ridden here. We were worried about the rain.
Yes.
And it's like, get to the trail, first of all, and the motor helps you do that efficiently and save your energy. Do trail maintenance.
Absolutely.
If you want to, without getting tuckered out, you can get back there and then work. If you have a knee sensitivity like I do, that's great. Or if you want to avoid having to shuttle your friends back and forth with the car, or, there's chairlifts and stuff. Well, you can go places where there isn't a chairlift and enjoy more,
you really can.
more laps.
Myself personally, I have bad knees, so for me to be able to continue cycling in mountain bikes,
yeah,
this is the way to go for me to go.
Fantastic.
It really opens up what I'm able to ride.
It's nice to hear that. We're probably on the same page, you and I. But it's nice to hear that sort of echoed back. I want to call out some of the other touch points here. So these are single lock flat rubber grips. We've got the maybe 2.5 finger levers, hydraulic, and they've got the adjustable reach. Going to be a little bit lighter weight. They're higher end Magura components. And then we've got this 2-way shifter, so you can push or pull on the high, and then it's 3 shifts on the low. Very nice. Over on the left, we've got the dropper. Sort of a lever, mimics the shifter levers. I like that versus up high, so it's a little more natural for me. Then we have the Bosch Purion display panel. I don't want to take off the battery here just because we're kind of all wet and stuff, but this has a nice integrated handle on it. It is removable. You can charge it on or off the bike. These power packs are pretty easy to find and borrow, so if you this is a nicer bike, you might want to ship it or go on vacation or something, you can rent a battery pack, a power pack, and you can also use the 400. So maybe you have a 400 laying around. They're compatible, they're interchangeable. Here's the locking core, and then down here we have the charging port, and there's a little LED power indicator. I like that. And then I believe, I might be wrong, but I think this bike comes with the faster 4-amp charger.
Yes,
and
it does.
That's what Bosch stocks with their higher-end bikes.
Yes.
And it's a 500 watt-hour, so it's going to fill it up a little bit quicker and get you out on the trail, which is really nice. Weighs about 5.7 pounds, that battery pack right there. Keep it away from extreme heat, extreme cold. Top it off every couple months if you haven't ridden.
Exactly.
Try not to let it get super low. I say 20% is where the cells start to maybe experience a little bit of stress.
Yeah, if you're going to let it sit for more than a couple of months and you can't get back to charge it, for longer term storage, ideally in the 65 to 75% charge range.
Okay.
Is best practice.
It's like 20 to 80 is sort of your sweet spot.
That's right.
Okay,
Exactly.
Thank you for that. That's a good, we're getting really technical here, but this is for a more advanced rider. You might appreciate some of that feedback. So here's the Pure On display panel. There is a micro USB port on the right-hand side, but it's actually just for diagnostic shop stuff. It doesn't give you power, so you can't really use it to run a phone or like a light or something, unfortunately, because you can with the Intuvia, the larger display. For a couple $100, sometimes shops can actually upgrade you if you want, but that's less relevant in a case like this. The display is fairly reachable, but these buttons, they click down like this at an angle. They don't click this way, so you kind of have to push higher up by the display if you want to have that consistent click. There's a power button on top. I'm going to press that. Comes to life, and it's backlit, so that's handy right now because it's a little bit overcast. There's a walk mode on the bottom, and as long as you're in one of the 4 levels of assist, you press walk mode and then hold plus, and the bike can limp along slowly. That's great for getting it up into like a ramp on a bike rack, or maybe a section of trail that it's just too technical for you. Especially, honestly, this is a little bit heavier. There are moments where you might want to get off. You don't want to, wreck the bike or like bend your rim or something, or it's just too soft. These are plus size tires, but sometimes the sand and stuff is just too much, or snow, so you might want to walk it. Walk mode's handy. Again, 53 pounds on this bike. Down here, we've got a 5-tick battery infographic. It's okay, 20% increments. It could be better. It'd be nice if they'd use that space for like percentage or just had 10 ticks. But, if you want to change from kilometers per hour to miles per hour, you hold minus and then the power button. And I didn't do it quite right, so I shut off the display. But that's how you switch back and forth on the units. Try this again. There we go. I pressed the minus first. And then up here we have the speed, current speed. In the middle, you have all these different trip stats. And you can hold the minus key to switch between them. So range right now, I held minus, and now I'm going to click up to eco, and it says, okay, what's my range? 51 miles, not bad. All the way up to turbo mode, it's down to like 16 miles. Okay, so you can see it really depends. It's like based on the last mile or so of riding.
Yeah.
And it's, one of us might weigh more, one of us might be pedaling harder, and it's dynamically thinking about that.
That's right.
Bosch is great. They make like cell phone sensors, self-driving car sensors. They're pretty,
They kind of know what they're doing.
Technical. Yeah, high quality stuff, and that's part of what you're paying for here. This is one of the better drive systems in my experience and opinion. I'm going to take it down to eMTB mode. So that's the third step up. Instead of giving you like 120 or 230 or it gives you 120 to 300. 300 is turbo mode, and that means that instead of worrying about shifting gears or trying to balance or whatever, you can focus on riding the bike and then not worry about pressing those buttons. And what level am I in? Just don't worry about it. It doesn't matter that these buttons could be better, Bosch. Come on, pick it up. But it works well enough. It's durable. It's highly water resistant, which is important. This has a sealed headset. It's got a sealed bottom bracket. It's a great bike. So I hopefully we're capturing some of those more technical bits and helping to justify and validate the price. To me, it's like, oh, it's an expensive bike, but on the other hand, you look at the components.
It's still, even considering that it's an electric bike with the components that it has, it's still great value. You can buy a non-electric mountain bike with similar components and spend nearly the same money. So really, you're buying a great mountain bike and you're getting electric for free.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe not quite exactly, but that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and honestly, if you ride your bike more and you're able to to go to places and enjoy keeping up with your friends or whatever the case may be. We say that a lot, keeping up with your friends, but I'm one of the better people between my friends, and I still enjoy an electric bike.
Absolutely.
So,
I do as well.
This is fantastic. I think, have we covered everything? Is there any other technical, we went really technical on the details.
We really did. I think we covered as much as your average end consumer really needs to know out the door.
But there's no kickstand.
No, there isn't.
Right?
This is a full suspension mountain bike. Please don't put a kickstand
Right.
on it.
Well, and they'd be bouncing all around when you ride.
That's right.
We've used the rock here, but if you're gonna set your bike down, tip it to the left side and try not to touch or bend those rotors. They'll start to squeak and then kind of zing and everything.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's get on this thing and take a little test ride. So I've asked Jason to do the honors and sit on that wet saddle here, and
It's moist.
nice. I'll put the camera on too so you can see and hear that motor. Pretty impressive. This is definitely soft. Nice. Climbing out of that, no problem. And remember, there is some motor noise happening, especially at higher RPM and when it's working harder. It's dealing with this softer stuff pretty well. Slalom. Nice. You can see that suspension working. That was great. Whew, I'm out of breath chasing you down. Had a lot of fun. We survived. Hopefully this footage comes off my camera intact.
Let's hope.
Again, thank you for your help. It's always fun to get a really technical and educated perspective. I've just had a blast visiting your store, checking out a few more cube bikes and doing a little store tour as well. For the full written review with all those stats and stuff that we were talking about, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Again, 4 sizes. So being able to come in and test ride it and have that experience.
It's huge.
It's huge. Yeah, it really is. Have fun out there, you guys. Ride safe. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Nice. Once it's up to speed, the sound of the gravel, it obstructs the sound of the motor. You can hear it a little bit. The Performance Line CX is the highest power Bosch motor. Oh, he caught some air. Nice. Okay guys, from here you can see that wonderful slap guard, the pedals that were added, 15 tooth chainring, Miranda alloy chainring guard, and then that little like chain suck block thing there, 11 to 46 in the rear. Great setup, but hopefully you can see how quickly that Bosch motor starts and stops, maybe listen for some shift detection, and then also just the additional noise that it produces. If you're pedaling this bike unpowered or you're going above the supported speed of 20 miles per hour, 32 kilometers per hour, there is going to be a little bit of that drag, that friction from the reduction gearing, but it's definitely, there's still freewheels when you're not pedaling, just like a regular bike. So you can easily top 20 miles per hour on descents and stuff like that. It's not actually going to slow you down that much. Just want to be clear. That's one of the trade-offs. But I do think you get a mechanical advantage and maybe just like that speed of starting and stopping with the smaller sprocket. And I'm going to be in eMTB mode, which is the most dynamic. So it's really coming down to how hard I'm pushing on those pedals and not just like on-off like some of the other modes. They're a little bit more set based on power levels. Okay guys, from here you can see the suspension actuating a little bit, hopefully maybe even the front suspension, and just how this performs. You got the motor but Jason's hanging out, and I'm curious, you know, what's your take on 4-bar Horst Link?
Well, having a 4-bar or a modified 4-bar suspension certainly will make that rear wheel travel independently from what you're doing. So basically it helps to separate the suspension from the rider input.
So it's like the bob that you hear about.
That's right. Now you're never going to have a truly vertical wheel path, which would be ideal.
Yeah, like straight up and down.
That's right. You're always going to have a little bit of chain growth. This bike is no different.
Yeah.
One thing that you will find is, you know, when you're pushing through the suspension on a more aggressive trail and pedaling, it's going to detect almost as though you're shifting a gear, so you'll feel a little bit of a drop in power.
Huh.
So it thinks you're shifting a gear because of that tug on the chain.
Yeah.
But really, it's not annoying. You get used to it, you know, a little bit into the ride. But back to that 4-link, and having the Horst Link is the pivot that's near the rear of the chain stay.
Okay.
That just allows the chain and seat stays to move independently.
Okay, and then, you know, this shock, it's not pointed forward, it's kind of up and down. That makes room for the battery.
It certainly does. Now, the orientation of your rear shock makes no difference in how the bike performs. It's more about the rest of the linkages and what path that rear wheel travels through.
So there are high bikes that have like a sprocket equalizing system. It's like a little pulley wheel up here, and I can't see I don't know if this is narrow wide tooth pattern to prevent like chain slip. Have you had any issues when you've been out riding?
Zero chain slip, zero chain suck. I've not dropped a single shift.
Okay.
And that's not anything to do with me as a rider. I am definitely towards the better novice rider.
Yeah,
I have some experience, but I wouldn't call myself a good rider. It's all about the bike. It does it.
Okay, well, I'm going to do some riding. Thanks,
cool.
Jason. Hope I didn't kick the camera. Definitely noticing that higher RPM support. You can wheelie this bike in eMTB mode. It's one of the few motors that's that responsive. It's not perfect, it's still not your legs, but it's very close. I'm just not that great at wheeling, so hope that gave you some perspective. Okay, now I'm on the full suspension. I'm gonna just ride this thing around and get some different angles. Maybe let you hear that motor a little bit. Got it up in, yeah, we're in turbo mode. Shift detection working pretty well. Fairly stable. Woo, puppy. Nice. So you can really feel it, this much travel. Pretty much at or above the 32 kilometers per hour. Oh yeah, getting some air. See if we lost Mark. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm gonna have all the specs, the standover height, length, width, all the stuff I do back at the site. A lot of great options. Cube really, you know, they have just a huge line and a lot of diversity between their bikes.
Yes.
They all use Bosch.
They only use Bosch, yes.
I think it's a testament. Some good stuff. So anyway, thank you. Ride safe, you guys.